There's a moment in everyone's life when we realize that not everyone we trust is truthful. I remember vividly the first time I had that gut-wrenching feeling when someone close to me was lying. At first, I brushed it off thinking I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew. That's the moment I turned to Stoicism, seeking clarity. Stoic philosophy teaches us to see things for what they are, not how we wish them to be. And that's where the journey begins. The call to adventure to uncover the truth, guided by ancient wisdom. When I began my journey with Stoicism, I realized something critical. Perception is everything. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Lies are just outside events. They have no power over us unless we let them. The first step to spotting a liar is understanding that how we perceive the world shapes our reality. By focusing on what we can control, our reactions, our judgments, our emotions, we start to strip away the veil of deceit. As I delved deeper into Stoicism, I found my mentors, Epictetus, Seneca, and of course Marcus Aurelius. Each of them provided timeless insights into human behavior, helping me sharpen my perception of dishonesty. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That struck me because in every interaction, especially when dealing with deceit, it's not the lie itself that causes harm, it's our reaction to it. Learning to control that reaction is the first step in protecting ourselves. When I first started understanding Stoicism, I knew it wasn't just about reading philosophical texts. It was about applying those lessons to real life. It was about facing difficult situations, moments of uncertainty, and those situations where we often let emotions cloud our judgment. One of the biggest trials for me was learning to spot deception while remaining calm and composed. The world is filled with moments of dishonesty, but how we respond to it defines us. This journey would test my ability to remain in control, stay rational, and not fall into the emotional traps set by liars. Here are the 7 ways Stoicism guided me through that challenge. One of the first lessons Stoicism teaches is emotional detachment. This was critical in my journey. The ability to detach yourself from the emotional weight of a situation is crucial when trying to spot a liar. I remember a time when someone very close to me wasn't being truthful. My natural instinct was to get angry, frustrated, and demand answers. But in that moment, I remembered what Epictetus taught. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. By controlling my emotions, I gained clarity. When you remove the emotional fog, you can see things as they truly are. Liars often prey on our emotions, trying to trigger a reaction that diverts us from the truth. They thrive in emotional chaos because when we're upset, we stop thinking clearly. I learned that in order to see the truth, I had to remain calm and observant. I couldn't let their dishonesty pull me into a spiral of emotional turmoil. Detaching emotionally didn't mean I stopped caring. It meant I was able to see through the deception without letting it control me. I recall having a conversation with someone who was clearly lying about a situation, and instead of reacting emotionally, I paused. I let them speak. I stayed silent and observed, allowing myself to detach from the frustration I was feeling. It was almost as if their words became clearer, as if the more I remained in control, the more their dishonesty unraveled itself. This calmness gave me the upper hand. The second tactic I learned was reading nonverbal cues. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." In simpler terms, our body reflects what's going on in our mind. I quickly learned that when someone is lying, their body tells the truth before their words catch up. This was a game changer for me. I started to notice the subtle signs that people gave away without realizing it. The way they shifted uncomfortably in their seat, the way their eyes darted from one place to another, and even the slight hesitation in their voice. These signs were like cracks in a wall that gave me a glimpse into what was really going on. The key was paying attention. One of the first times I applied this in real life, I remember the person in question was telling me a story that didn't quite add up. As they spoke, I noticed the way their hands fidgeted with a napkin, the way they couldn't maintain eye contact for more than a few seconds. Instead of confronting them immediately, I let them continue talking. By staying patient and watching for these nonverbal cues, I could tell that something was off. The lesson here is simple. People can control their words, but their body will betray them. Their discomfort in the lie will seep through, whether it's a nervous twitch, a quick glance to avoid your eyes, or even the way they start speaking too quickly or too slowly. These signals become more apparent the calmer you are. It's as if by grounding yourself in Stoicism, you sharpen your ability to perceive what others are trying to hide. It's fascinating how much Stoicism aligns with these subtle observations. The philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control, our responses, our emotions, our actions. The beauty of this approach is that by mastering ourselves, we can gain insight into others. When someone is lying, their need to control the situation often backfires, and all you have to do is watch closely and remain composed. Now, let's talk about the third way. One of the most eye-opening lessons I learned during my Stoic journey was the power of listening, really listening. It's easy to get caught up in your own thoughts while someone is speaking, but when you practice the art of detached observation, you start to notice things most people miss. For me, it was realizing that people who lie can't help but trip over their own words eventually. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." This quote resonated with me because it captures the very essence of spotting a liar. When someone is lying, the truth remains out of reach for them, and their story unravels in subtle ways, through inconsistencies. I once found myself in a situation where a friend was telling me a story about an event I knew they hadn't attended. I decided not to confront them immediately, but instead focused on the small details of their story. At first, everything seemed perfectly fine, but as the conversation continued, I noticed the cracks. They said one thing earlier, and then later they contradicted themselves. It was in those small, almost imperceptible details, the exact time, the place, or who was involved, that I saw the lie unfolding. It reminded me of how a web slowly begins to tangle when the truth isn't there to hold it together. The lesson here is not to rush to judgment. Allow the inconsistencies to reveal themselves. In a way, it's like a puzzle. Each piece of information builds until you start seeing the bigger picture. The beauty of this approach, and something that Stoicism teaches us, is to remain patient and detached from the outcome. The more calmly you observe, the more you will start to notice these inconsistencies. And once you spot one, it becomes easier to spot others. Let's move on with the fourth way. Perhaps one of the most underrated skills I've learned from Stoicism is the power of silence. Seneca once said, "It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence." There's wisdom in staying silent, especially when someone is lying to you. I discovered this during a particularly tense conversation when I knew the other person wasn't being truthful. Instead of jumping in with accusations, I chose to remain silent. And what happened next was fascinating. You see, when people lie, they often expect you to react. They want to provoke you to see if you'll question them or challenge their story. But when you respond with silence, it unsettles them. It's like they're waiting for a trap to spring, but nothing happens. They become uncomfortable. Silence gives them room to fill the space, and when liars speak too much, they start to contradict themselves or reveal more than they intended. I remember sitting across from someone who was clearly fabricating a story. Every fiber of me wanted to call them out, to demand the truth. But instead, I remained quiet, nodding every now and then. It was uncomfortable for them. They fidgeted, shifted in their seat, and as the silence stretched, they began to over-explain, trying to justify their story. That's when I saw it, the cracks. Their need to talk more to fill the void of silence exposed the lie for what it was. Silence, I learned, is a tool of strength. It gives you the upper hand without ever having to raise your voice. When you stay quiet, you give the liar space to reveal themselves. You hold your power just as the Stoics did. Silence speaks volumes, and often, it says more than words ever could. Here is the fifth way. Of course, there are times when silence isn't enough. Sometimes you need to confront the lie, but how you do it makes all the difference. The Stoic approach, as I've come to realize, is to be direct and calm, never aggressive. When someone is lying to you, the goal isn't to prove them wrong or humiliate them. The goal is clarity, and the best way to get there is by asking direct questions. There's a quote by Epictetus that comes to mind. "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This quote is a reminder to listen carefully before we speak, but when it's time to ask questions, we must do so with precision and purpose. Liars often rely on ambiguity. They dance around the truth, hoping you won't notice the gaps in their story. By asking clear, pointed questions, you force them to either confront the truth or stumble over their own words. I learned this the hard way. In a past experience, I would ask vague questions, leaving room for the person to maneuver out of a corner. It wasn't until I started asking direct questions that I noticed a change. Instead of saying, "Oh, were you really there that night?" I'd say, "Who exactly did you see when you were there?" This specificity puts pressure on the liar. It requires them to commit to their story in detail, and more often than not, that's when they falter. I remember one occasion when I asked a direct question about a specific event. The person hesitated, tried to recall the details, and I could see the uncertainty in their eyes. They had been so focused on maintaining the broader narrative that they hadn't prepared for the specifics. When you ask direct questions, you're doing more than seeking answers. You're challenging the integrity of their story. You're peeling away the layers of deceit. By using this tactic, I gained confidence. I didn't have to accuse anyone of lying outright. I simply asked the right questions and allowed the truth or lack thereof to come to light. And that's the Stoic way, measured, calm, and always in control. And now let's talk about the sixth way. Another powerful lesson I've absorbed from Stoic philosophy is the wisdom of focusing on what people do, rather than what they say. As I progressed in life and tried to navigate relationships, friendships, and even work environments, I often found myself confused by conflicting words. People would promise things, offer assurances, and speak in ways that sounded perfect, almost too good to be true. And more often than not, it was. The Stoics taught me that words are often empty unless backed by action. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And it's this truth that helped me understand a critical part of human behavior. When people are lying or being deceptive, their actions will almost always betray them. They can say one thing, but watch closely, and their behavior will reveal the truth. I remember being in a situation where someone kept making promises. Promises to change, to be better, to follow through on commitments. And for a while, I clung to those words, hoping they meant something real. But Stoicism guided me to a deeper understanding of human nature. Instead of getting swept up in the promises, I started observing the actions behind them. Were they really changing? Were they actually doing the things they said they would? The answer became clear through their repeated failure to act. In those moments, I realized that actions carry a weight that words can never match. It was a game changer for me. I no longer let sweet words sway me. I became anchored in what people did, not what they said. I learned to trust my own observations rather than the illusions created by words. It's a freeing realization, one that helped me spot lies more easily and protect myself from false promises. Stoicism gave me the clarity to focus on the truth that is shown, not the one spoken. Finally, here we are with the last way. There's a certain beauty in letting go of the need to control outcomes, something I initially struggled with. I used to think that if I could just manage everything perfectly, everything would turn out as I hoped. But as Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. The more I leaned into this concept, the more I saw how liberating it was to detach myself from outcomes and expectations. In situations where lies are involved, whether you're uncovering a deception or confronting someone about their dishonesty, there's always a temptation to want things to go a certain way. Maybe you want the person to admit they lied, to apologize, or to make things right. I found myself, time and time again, frustrated when that didn't happen. People would double down on their lies or refuse to acknowledge the truth, and it used to eat away at me. But then I embraced the Stoic idea of letting go. I realized that my peace of mind didn't depend on their reactions or their admissions. What mattered was how I handled myself in those moments. Could I remain calm? Could I stay composed and grounded, even when things didn't go the way I wanted them to? The answer was yes, but it required a shift in perspective. By practicing detachment from the outcome, I regained a sense of control over my emotions and reactions. I no longer needed validation from the other person. I didn't need them to admit their wrongs or confirm the truth I already knew. And that, to me, was the ultimate power. In letting go of the need for a specific outcome, I found strength within myself that no external situation could take away. This, I learned, was the essence of Stoic resilience. As I moved through this journey of recognizing deception, reading nonverbal cues, and learning how to remain emotionally detached, something incredible started happening. I began to reclaim my power. The same power I once thought resided in others, in their words, their approval, and their actions, was mine all along. This, I realized, was the reward of following the Stoic path. There's a moment of clarity that comes when you no longer allow yourself to be manipulated or swayed by dishonesty. It's like stepping into a space of peace, where the noise of lies, manipulation, and drama can no longer reach you. I remember vividly the first time I walked away from a conversation where I knew someone was being deceptive, and I didn't feel the need to react. I didn't feel anger, disappointment, or frustration. Instead, I felt calm. I had reclaimed the power to dictate how I felt, regardless of their actions. It wasn't about winning an argument or getting someone to confess. It wasn't even about proving I was right. It was about maintaining my inner peace, no matter what storm was brewing around me. And in that moment, I realized something profound. The lies, the deceptions, and the games others play only have as much power over you as you give them. By reclaiming my power, I became impervious to the chaos. Stoicism teaches us that the ultimate reward lies not in controlling others, but in controlling ourselves. It's about mastering our emotions, our responses, and our minds. And once you reach this place, there's nothing anyone can do to shake you. It's a quiet strength, one that doesn't need to prove itself but simply exists. This journey into Stoic philosophy, this path of applying its teachings in real-life situations, has been transformative. I'm no longer at the mercy of others' lies or manipulations. I no longer feel the need to confront or challenge every falsehood. Instead, I stand firm in the knowledge that my power comes from within, from my ability to remain calm, composed, and unshaken by the actions of others. And that, my friends, is the true reward. After reclaiming my power by mastering the art of emotional detachment and focusing on the truth revealed through actions, I felt a shift in myself. But the journey didn't end there. In fact, this was just the beginning of the real transformation. It's one thing to recognize deception, to stand firm in the face of lies, but it's an entirely different challenge to take that strength and continue to grow from it. The journey back, as Stoic philosophy reminds us, is not about retreating into comfort. It's about taking the lessons learned and applying them every single day. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You must build up your life action by action, and be content if each one achieves its goal as far as possible." This resonated with me deeply. I realized that building inner strength wasn't a single act but a continuous process, a series of actions taken every day. I began by reflecting on how I'd handled situations in the past. When people had lied to me, I'd often reacted emotionally, sometimes with anger, sometimes with hurt, and other times by retreating in silence. Each of those reactions chipped away at my inner strength because, in those moments, I'd given my power to someone else. They controlled how I felt. Now, having embraced Stoic principles, I knew the key was in taking back that control, not just for a moment, but in every interaction moving forward. Building inner strength, I realized, was about more than just recognizing when someone was being dishonest. It was about how I responded to those moments and how I continued to respond long after the conversation had ended. One of the most powerful tools I discovered during this journey was self-reflection. The Stoics emphasized this practice, looking inward at the end of each day and evaluating how we handled the challenges we faced. Epictetus reminds us, "When the soul is strong, external things will not sway us." I took this to heart. Each night, I would reflect on my actions, my emotions, and where I had let external events affect my inner peace. And, slowly but surely, I saw a change in myself. The anger I used to feel when someone lied to me began to fade. Instead of reacting impulsively, I learned to pause. I learned to take a step back and observe both them and myself. And in that pause, I found clarity. I found strength. It's not easy to remain calm when you're confronted with deception, but Stoicism teaches us that this calmness, this inner peace, is where true power lies. It wasn't about becoming emotionally detached in a cold, uncaring way. Instead, it was about protecting my inner peace, safeguarding it from the chaos that others might bring. The more I practiced, the stronger I became. And with each challenge I faced, I felt less shaken, more grounded, and more in control of myself. That's the real journey back. Learning to take what you've gained and applying it in the everyday trials of life. It's about recognizing that true inner strength doesn't come from the absence of challenges, but from how you navigate them. And with each step, I felt myself growing, not just stronger but more resilient. As I continued on this path, something unexpected happened. The more I applied these Stoic principles, the more people around me began to notice. Friends, family, even colleagues, they saw the shift in me. They saw that I wasn't as easily rattled as I once had been, that I was more composed, more centered. And they started asking questions. How do you stay so calm? How do you deal with difficult people without letting it affect you? I realized then that the journey wasn't just about me. The wisdom I'd gained wasn't something to keep locked away. It was something to share. Stoicism teaches us that we're all interconnected, that our individual journeys, though deeply personal, can serve to uplift others. Seneca said, "No man can live a happy life, or even a supportable life, without the study of wisdom." And it became clear to me that part of this wisdom was in sharing what I had learned. I started having more conversations, real, meaningful conversations about Stoicism. I talked about how emotional detachment wasn't about shutting off feelings, but about not letting others dictate how you feel. I shared stories of how reading nonverbal cues had helped me see through deception, how focusing on actions over words had given me clarity in relationships, and how remaining unattached to outcomes had freed me from unnecessary stress. People began to resonate with these ideas. They saw themselves in my story because, let's face it, we've all dealt with deception, manipulation, and betrayal at some point. But here's the thing, most people don't realize they have the power to rise above it. They feel trapped, believing they need the other person's validation, confession, or apology to move forward. But Stoicism frees us from that need. One by one, I saw the impact of this philosophy spreading. It wasn't just about confronting liars or dealing with difficult people. It was about reclaiming one's own life, one's own peace. The more I shared, the more I realized that this wisdom was like an elixir, a gift to pass on. And as I did, it felt like a burden was lifted, not just for me, but for those who listened. This was the return with the elixir, the moment when the wisdom I'd gained wasn't just for me anymore. It was for everyone. By embodying Stoic principles, by living them out in real time, I became a source of calm for others. And that's the true reward. Not just finding peace for myself, but helping others find theirs. In this world, where deception and emotional manipulation are so common, Stoicism offers a path of clarity, strength, and resilience. It reminds us that we have the power to control our own minds, our own reactions, and ultimately our own lives. And as I continue to walk this path, I know that the journey isn't over. It's ongoing, and every day brings new opportunities to apply these lessons. But one thing is certain, the wisdom I've gained will always guide me. And now I share it with you. I invite you to embrace this philosophy, to apply it in your life, and to watch as it transforms not only how you deal with others, but how you see yourself. Because at the end of the day, the real power lies within you. If you found value in this journey, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know how you've applied Stoic philosophy in your own life. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos that explore the depth of Stoic wisdom. Together, we can continue learning and growing on this path of self-improvement.